How to find ideas, how to be creative, how to switch on that creativity mode whenever you need. Well, I don't know, but with this video, I hope I can give you some tips that might help you to push your creativity whenever you feel stuck. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. For the new visitors, my name is Francesco. I make house music as distilled noise, and on this channel I share my journey, I share some tips and some opinions that might be interesting for music nerds like me. So if you're one of them, consider subscribing to the channel. So in this video, I'm sharing 6 tips on how I help myself to be creative, things that I explored and experimented with through the years, and then now I apply every time I need. But before starting, I want to talk about ideas. What is an idea? There are different interpretations of the meaning of idea, but one that I particularly like is coming from a book that I'm reading, where they talk about ideas as something which doesn't belong to us. We don't generate the ideas we have, but it's more like an entity that is flowing in the air, and when we are ready, they decide to come to life through us. We are like a mean through which ideas get to life. It's kind of a spiritual way to think about ideas, but I like it because the thing is that if we're not ready to accept and welcome that idea, if we're not receptive, they just pass by and we won't be able to give life to those ideas. So this has to do with the concept of listening to yourself, which will be one of the tips that I'll give you in this video. This video is an extract of a video that I shared on Patreon, where I also give practical examples on how I generate ideas, and I hope you enjoy it. So the first key element when it comes to being creative is time. I've seen myself that it's much more likely that I come up with good ideas when I spend 1 or 2 hours refining a sketch that I threw down in the first minutes I dedicated to music production. Taking the time to mess around with Ableton can lead both to step on happy accidents or to improve with the time the idea we started from. So I suggest you to take one day, one afternoon, one evening and dedicate it to work on creating the main idea where you're not distracted by anything, and those days where you have less time, you can dedicate 30 to 1 hours to music production. Maybe use it to finalize stuff, to the arrangements, so to do those tasks that don't require your full creativity. This is another obvious but still important way to get inspired. How many times you were listening to some music and you got inspired to start making your own music, maybe slightly copying some of the elements of the song you were listening, maybe not, but still starting right after you got that inspiration. Another way might be watching video tutorials, watching other people making music in their studio, getting inspired just by seeing other people making creative things, and this is also what I hope will happen with this video. So whether it's music, whether it's a video tutorial, or spending time in the studio with friends, exposing yourself to influences, to things that can contaminate you and make you want to make music is for sure a great way to be creative. Free flow is a concept that I also exposed on my YouTube channel some time ago on the video How to Find Your Sound. It consists in a free experimentation with no aim to make something specific, no aim to find a good bass pattern, no aim to find the best chord progressions. Sometimes this experimentation can end up in a good idea where we start a new track from. Other times we simply learn something new. Consider the tools and sounds offered by Ableton and the new plugin that we buy from time to time. I think it's mandatory to carve out time from our schedule, test them in a free flow state and see what comes out. So when you make music, the question is, do you ever stop and listen to what your mind suggests to you? I realize that a lot of the times as producers, we keep making things, we keep trying out samples, devices, plugins until we bump into something that is nice to hear, into a good idea or a sound pattern. But have you tried to see if your mind suggests you a melody, a bass line, What I do, I often press play and listen to the music that I've done so far and try to sing something in my mind, improvising a melody, a bass line with my voice. Other times, I just sit down on my chair, look at the wall and wait for minutes, letting my mind free to suggest me anything. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and a lot of times ideas that sound great in my head, they don't sound as great when I try to implement them on Ableton, but still, I think it's definitely worth to try these experiments. Our mind is always waiting to suggest us something, but if we're always busy, there's no time for it to help us. I consider this something which is a bit different from getting influenced, because when I use reference tracks, I tend to want to get as close as possible to that specific element that I like in that track. I have seen masterclasses from well-known producers where they make most of their tracks by copying elements from old music. This is an option that is fine, for the reason that even if you copy something, at the end it will sound different from the original in the context of your track. On the other side, sometimes we risk to get trapped in a loop where we spend so much time trying to replicate the sound of the reference track instead of moving on with our project and trying to move on with new ideas. In the end, it's good to find a trade-off between using reference tracks when we need and the other 4 points that I mentioned before. This is a tip that doesn't have much to do with creativity, but it's very important anyway, and I want to share it. Often we start a track wanting to achieve a certain result, but we end up with a completely different one. This is something that I've been told by a lot of my students, and also it happens all the time to myself as well. So I invite you to accept it, finish that track anyway. Next time you'll do better. An example is when we want to try to make a new style. It can happen that as you move on, you end up with something which is closer to your usual style, and so you might get frustrated. No problem, it's just one more track in your drawer. Next time, try to understand better the main elements of the new style, try to stick closer to a reference track, and little by little you make the new style yours. Alright guys, I hope this video gave you some creative energy. If it did, hit the like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.